We are back with week 2 of the Little Cup World Cup, and this week is between India and Europe. There are 8 games in total, so I'll be covering every single one of them. And we start with game 1, which was my game. So we're playing against Team Europe. I'm using a very standard team, nothing too special. It's a team built around Mianfu, Marini, Trapinch to trap things with first impression. And my opponent also has a very standard team, nothing too special coming out from teams. And this game is really going to show why Mianfu is so dominant. And I've covered this game in more detail in my previous video, so I'm only going to go over it briefly here. But my opponent makes one mistake. So he gets faked out, then I'm going to knock off the coughing, and he's going to get a toxic spike up, but it's not a very useful toxic spike. You know, Marini can remove it anytime I want, Natu is not affected, Ferroseed is not affected, and ultimately it's just not a very useful toxic spike. So that one turn mistake is able to give me enough momentum where I'm actually able to beat the coughing 1v1, and that is a really big deal, because the Pokemon that is supposed to beat Mianfu just lost to the Mianfu, so you really have nothing else that can switch into high jump kick anymore. So it's basically the Mianfu show. He can't really stop the Mianfu, it's just going to keep coming in again and again and again, and you can't really stop the Mianfu, it's just going to keep coming back. And it was basically a very relatively clean 6-0, and that one mistake of wasting a turn with coughing ended up really costing him, and ultimately he could never really come back from a Mianfu that could just come in again, fake out, high jump kick, fake out, high jump kick. He could never really come back from that, and eventually he does forfeit, so India gets a relatively easy 1-0 lead to start off the series. Then we move on to Game 2. Game 2, we're using a team built around Shellos, and Shellos is a very interesting Pokemon. It runs a moveset of Amnesia, Curse, Recover, and then an attacking move. It's basically the ultimate sit there and do nothing Pokemon, but if you let it boost all the way to full, it becomes a very threatening Pokemon. So it's kind of like a high risk, high reward. If it can boost all the way, it's really good, otherwise it sits there and it does nothing. So that's basically our strategy to try and win with the Shellos. And we do have a Trapping Magnemite, but unfortunately there is no Ferroseed on his team. Similarly, they also have a Trapping Magnemite, but we don't have a Ferroseed on our team. And the main thing that's going to be a problem for our team is how do we deal with Porygon? We don't know the set, and that Porygon could be maybe Choice Scarf, or it could be Agility. And we don't really have a good switch-in because our Steel type is Magnemite, it is not, for example, Pawniard or Ferroseed. And that's really going to be the challenge. How do we deal with the Porygon? And one thing we have at our disposal is we have a Thunder Wave Abra. Thunder Wave Abra can paralyze the Porygon and neutralize it so that other things can defeat it. That's the main idea with a Thunder Wave Abra. So we're going to see the situation where Shellos, Mianfu, he's going to U-turn into Porygon as the Shellos uses Curse. And now it's a really pivotal situation. How do you deal with the Magnemite? You go to the Steel type on the normal type, it reveals Agility, which is very big. It reveals its Agility. Tri-Attack unfortunately gets the burn for him, and that damage, Charge Beam only did 26, which revealed that it is Eviolite Porygon. At this point, you're going to have to sacrifice Magnemite. That burn is kind of unfortunate. So you sacrifice Magnemite, and now how do you deal with the Porygon? This is going to be the important question. And how do you deal with it? Mianfu just dies to Psychic. Porygon will outspeed and one-hit KO with Psychic. Trapinch, you can actually calculate, Superpower Trapinch cannot beat Porygon, because Porygon can recover, and every time Superpower attacks, you're going to be losing your attack stat, right? Because Superpower drops your attack. So Porygon can keep recovering until Trapinch doesn't do enough damage because you're taking so many drops to your attack. So Trapinch is not the right answer either. You can go to Shellos, but the problem with Shellos is that technically it can win, but you're going to be risking so much because you're going to sit there, you're going to Amnesia, you're going to recover, Amnesia, recover, Amnesia, recover. That's all you're going to be doing until you get enough. And in that meantime, Porygon can Tri-Attack hacks you, it can crit you, it can get good damage rolls. There are so many things that can happen, and when you're a sitting duck, probabilistically, you're going to be taking an unhealthy amount of risk simply doing nothing. So the correct way of dealing with it is to go to Abra, Thunder Wave the Porygon. We have a Focus Sash, so even if the Focus Sash gets triggered, it's not the end of the world. It'll be a 3-on-3. We essentially trade Abra for Porygon, and we play a 3-on-3. Mianfu, Trapinch, Shellos versus Mianfu, Abra, Magnemite. That is a very even 50-50, like a 3-on-3 at its truest form, and you can go on from there. But you need to understand you need to use the Abra to Thunder Wave the Porygon. So unfortunately he goes to Trapinch, and before he even went Trapinch, you would know Trapinch is losing for this exact reason, because you can use the calc, and you basically know Trapinch does not win. So for whatever reason, he did go Trapinch. Trapinch is not going to win. Then he tries to go to Mianfu, but as we mentioned earlier, Mianfu is just going to get outsped. There is no Eviolite. It gets one hit KO'd. You go to Shellos, 48, you Amnesia here, and this was unlucky. So 48 Amnesia, doing 34 after the Amnesia was probably a lucky roll, but the thing is that he was eventually going to get that luck, because all you're doing with Shellos is you're going to recover, you're going to Amnesia, and every time you do one of those moves, you're not attacking him, and you're also risking the chance of getting unlucky. So he got unlucky relatively early, but it was still an unlucky thing. And again he goes to Trapinch, and again Trapinch is not going to actually beat Porygon. It just doesn't. You can open up the calc, you can figure that out. So now, after you sacrifice your entire team, now you go to Abra, and now you knock out the Porygon, but at this point you've lost too much. You've lost too many Pokemon and you lose the game. Europe ties the game 1-1, and I think it was a critical blunder to sacrifice most of your team instead of going to Abra first. So Europe ties the game at 1-1. Now we enter into Game 3. And Game 3 is Sun and Moon Little Cup, that is Generation 7. And Frisoeva is using a very ambitious strategy. Basically, he's going to sacrifice Diglett, and he's going to sacrifice Alolan Vulpix as well, and then he's going to go to Vullaby. So what he's done is he sacrificed 2 entire Pokemon for Stealth Rock, for Aurora Veil, and for Momentum. And it's a very high risk, high reward strategy, because you sacrificed, 30% of your team for, Stealth Rock and Aurora Veil, right? So it's a very big investment, and it has to pay off for him. Otherwise, he would have lost too many Pokemon. And from Mikaav's point of view, this is not a very easy situation to deal with. It was well worth it for him to get the Stealth Rock up, get the Aurora Veil up, because now it's very difficult for Mikaav to deal with. Onix can lose to Hidden Power Grass, Spritzee can get Air Slash flinched, Grimer Alola can get Air Slash flinched as well, and on top of all of that, your attacks are only doing half as much as they would. So for example, Moonblast doesn't even KO Vullaby. So it's a very tough situation to do. For example, if you go to Spritzee, even if you win 1v1 versus Vullaby, now his Scraggy can win the game. So it's a very difficult situation to deal with, and investing 2 Pokemon for a high risk, high reward strategy looks like it's paying off. So how does Mikaav react to the Vullaby? He goes to Snivy. He goes to a grass type versus a flying type, which at first glance looks really weird. But the reason he's doing it is he's sacrificing Snivy so that he can defog. Now you sacrifice an entire Pokemon just to defog, but in this case it is worth it because your opponent has already sacrificed 2. So you still have a 5-4 lead, relatively speaking. And now that Aurora Veil is gone, you have a lot more freedom. You go to Onix here, your opponent goes to Scraggy on the Rock Blast, now you can go to Spritzee, and you ultimately have a check for everything. Scraggy, checked by Spritzee. Magby, checked by Corphish. Spritzee, checked by Grimer. Vullaby, checked by Onix. So you have all the tools in place to be able to win the game, and we're going to see that happen. Spritzee, Mianfu is a sacrifice here, just to get fake out chip damage. It's a sacrifice, you don't need Mianfu to check anything. Now you go to Corphish, Aqua Jet incoming, Mach Punch here, but it's not enough. Corphish revenge kills. Vullaby knocks out Corphish, but now Onix knocks out Vullaby. And eventually Grimer knocks out Spritzee, and it's a 2-1 lead for India. The high risk, high reward strategy from Frisoeva did not pay off. Now we enter into DPP, and DPP is notorious for being a coin flip type of metagame. So we have the unfortunate lead Gligar into Staryu, so we're going to be taking damage here. Reflect is a very interesting move to half the damage of attacks. And typically in DPP, the metagame is very offensive. So you want to be attacking as much as you can, because the only recovery options are things like Oran Berry. There's not much bulk. Typically, whoever can attack more will win in DPP. So getting the lead matchup is very important, because you attack first. So Munchlax already took 40% of damage, and that is well worth it. So we see Houndour come on the Duskull. Duskull uses Return. and didn't use Willow. That's very important. It didn't Willow into a Flash Fire Houndour. Crunch is only doing 35 because of the Reflect. And you can see HSOWA has slowly built up a lead. He's getting damage off, he's getting his Reflects up, he's revealing Pokemon, which is quite important in DPP. He's already revealed 4 Pokemon. Chinchou is taking damage now. You go to Munchlax, and every bit of damage is really, really important. He gets a really nice Pursuit off, and you can slowly see it slipping away. You know, he's not out of the game yet, but he had that poor lead matchup, and HSOWA is relentless. He's not letting Noisy get back into the game. The momentum is too much. He's revealing too many Pokemon, he's taking too much damage overall, and it's really tough to deal with. Gligar versus Duskull now, and Noisy makes a strategic decision. He values Stealth Rock more than getting burnt. So he made that decision, I am okay with getting burnt, but I am going to get my Stealth Rock up. It's how I get back into the game, because if I can get this residual damage, that's the way how I get back in the game. So he makes that strategic decision to let Gligar get burned, and as you can see, he's not doing much damage anymore. He's only doing, 19%, but he made that decision. He goes to Gligar now. These Gligars are going to trade Aqua Tails, and the burnt one is not going to be doing much. He does miss the Aqua Tail here, but U-turns out. And now he goes to Staryu again, but because of the Stealth Rock damage, now Duskull can one-hit KO. And now you enter into the reason why they call DPP a coin flip. What do you predict? Do you predict either Crunch or Pursuit from Stunky? You have to get the predict right, otherwise Duskull can faint. Because if you switch out and he uses Pursuit, Duskull is going to faint. So you really have to get the predictions right. So he gets the prediction right once. He does go to stay in on the Pursuit. He does return, does 48, which is really not a lot. He gets the predict right again, going to Houndour on the Crunch. And now there's another predict. Stunky is going to use Sucker Punch. Do you Will-O-Wisp predicting that? And similarly, do you Crunch predicting Houndour to predict your Sucker Punch and Willow? So what do you do here? He gets the prediction right. He uses Sucker on the Houndour Sucker Punch. Now you go to Munchlax, you sacrifice it for Life Orb Recoil. And now you have another coin flip. As the Duskull, do you Shadow Sneak or do you Will-O-Wisp predicting either Sucker Punch or Crunch? Which one do you do? And unfortunately, he gets the predict wrong here. He Will-O-Wisp predicting Sucker. Stunky is going to die, but with 2 Pokemon left, it's going to be really unlikely you can break through. You surf their Munchlax here, you're not doing enough damage. And now you go to Mantike, and Mantike cannot beat Lax, so it's over, basically. That miss did not matter. And now it is 2-2. Europe has tied the game back at 2-2. Now we enter into Game 5, which is Sword and Shield Little Cup, Generation 8. We're using a Psychic Spam team, and the idea is that one Pokemon can remove Natu, and then the other Psychic type can try and win the game. That's going to be our idea. And we're using Cosmic Power Natu, which is a very uncommon set. And the idea is that, you give one turn of leeway. You make one mistake, and all of a sudden, Natu can get a Cosmic Power boost, then it can boost again, and all of a sudden you're really in a lot of trouble. So you really have to be careful about Cosmic Power Natu, and especially when you don't know it's Cosmic Power Natu, it can really become a problem, which is our idea here. We didn't want to look like Cosmic Power Natu, so it's kind of hidden behind in the team. So we see the classic Mianfu lead. Unfortunately, we do lose the speed tie here, and then we trade knockoffs, and now we're kind of in a tough spot, right? Because High Jump Kick will one-hit KO our Mianfu. So we switch out into Marini, but he predicts the switch, he U-turns, he goes into Diglett, and he's going to trap our Marini, and that is kind of a big deal. It's a big deal because we lost our fighting type switch-in, but we also have Abra as an offensive check to Mianfu, so it's not totally lost, but it does suck to lose such an important Pokemon so early to the Diglett trap. We go to Mudbray here, he goes to Mianfu, Rock Tomb, and then we're going to Earthquake next turn as well. Mianfu does have decent bulk. U-turns on the Mudbray, goes to Staryu here, and Staryu is very difficult to switch into without the Marini. We do have a Berry Juice Poniard, which can heal all the way up. Hydro Pump, and we get a knockoff, and knockoff is going to be really valuable for something like Abra. Abra can now one-hit KO Staryu, which is really valuable. He goes to Mianfu on the Poniard using knockoff here. And he goes to Mudbray, because that's really the only switch in. Goes into the fake out here. High jump kick does not kill the Mudbray, but he gets the predict wrong. He rock tombed predicting Natu instead of earthquaking to knock out Mianfu. So he gets the predict wrong, and he's going to have a few more opportunities to predict. Because he has a lot of HP left, he's still very powerful, he's going to have opportunities to predict, he just has to make the predicts. Rock Tomb again, he'll have another predicting opportunity. Do you Earthquake, do you Rock Tomb? Well, after a fake out, right? Do you Earthquake, do you Rock Tomb, what do you do? He goes to Natu, on the Earthquake, predicts wrong again. U-turn again, he's going to Mianfu. Do you Earthquake predicting it? No, you don't predict it. Now, again, you have another decision. Do you Earthquake, do you Rock Tomb? Fake out comes in, unfortunate crit, but it doesn't really matter, because Staryu will revenge kill. And this time you get the predict right. So this time you do knock out the Mianfu. Now Staryu comes in, you sacrifice Mudbray because you don't really have anything left. Now you go to Mianfu, you U-turn on the coughing switch. U-turn into Abra, a little bit of a fast forward here, Mianfu, fake out, get chip damage, Poniard. And this is really the pivotal moment of the game. Poniard sacrifices for chip, and it dies, right? And now you go to Natu, and Natu is Cosmic Power. But boulicrok does not know it is Cosmic Power. So if he knew it was Cosmic Power, he would probably go to Poniard immediately so he can do a knockoff. But he plays just a little bit too lazily. He's going to roost here, but now Natu is going to Cosmic Power up. It's going to get another one up. And what Natu is going to be able to do is it's actually going to be able to beat Poniard 1v1 because of the defense boost. So it beats Poniard 1v1. Unfortunately, it takes too much damage. Now Staryu is going to revenge kill. Mianfu, U-turn. Abra knocks out with Shadow Ball. Diglett is going to come in and try and trap kill Abra. But Life Orb beat up is not strong enough to beat Abra with only 3 Pokemon. So Abra lives the hit, uses Psychic, and now the game will come down to a speed tie between Abra and Staryu. If Abra wins the speed tie, it knocks out Staryu and knocks out Coughing next. But if Staryu wins the speed tie, it knocks out Abra, does a lot of damage to Mianfu, and then Coughing will beat Mianfu. So whoever wins the speed tie wins the game. It is 2-2 India versus Europe. Whoever wins the speed tie wins the game. And unfortunately, Europe wins the speed tie, and they will go on to win the game. So Europe takes a 3-2 lead versus India after this game. Then we move on to Game 5. And Game 5 is, we're using a Shell Smash Turtoga, and our opponent is using kind of like a Diglett, Abra, Ghastly type of offensive team. So we lead Mianfu into the Abra, and it just dies in one hit, so I'm not really sure what happened, but you'll notice one thing, the average Abra took damage from Life Orb, which means that it is Inner Focus Abra. So the idea with Abra was to live a fake out from Mianfu, and then one-hit KO the Mianfu. So even if he attacked and used Fake Out, Abra would have lured and killed the Mianfu. So a really nice lure from Fille, and now we go to Diglett. We're going to counter trap the Abra here. That goes down. Now Porygon is going to counter trap with Arena Trap here, like tracing it, Stealth Rock. Diglett's going to get knocked out. And it's not the end of the world usually, right? You lose 2 Pokemon, but you get 1 Pokemon and Stealth Rock. Now obviously you would rather not lose 2 Pokemon, but it's not a total end of the world situation in normal situations. But it actually is the end of the world right now, because you don't have a ground type anymore, you don't have a fighting type anymore. You are really going to struggle versus Scarf Magnemite. It can Volt Switch, it can do whatever it wants, and you can't stop it anymore because you don't have Diglett and you don't have Mianfu. And on top of all of that, how do you beat the Porygon? You don't have Mianfu to threaten it out. You know, you really don't have a lot of options versus Porygon. What do you do? And then Porygon and Scarf Mag are going to be too much. So he goes to his own Porygon to Arena Trap the Arena Trap Porygon. But he reveals Toxic, which is a very uncommon move. But what it's going to allow him to do is it's going to allow him to beat Porygon 1v1 because of the Toxic damage. They are both trapped because of Arena Trap, and a little bit of a PP stall here. But eventually, Fille's Porygon is going to win because of the Toxic damage. And now what do you do here, right? You're going to lose to Scarf Magnemite. Everything is weak to Scarf Magnemite. So what I would do here is I would try and set up my Shell Smash Tirtoga. Unfortunately, you need to smash twice to outspeed Scarf Magnemite, but you don't really have an option. You're going to lose to Scarf Magnemite no matter what. So you have to take this one opportunity to try and set up on the paralysis chance. He goes to Archon, but Fille very calmly, he sacrifices Diglett. He knows he doesn't need it anymore. Magnemite wins the game. He goes to Magnemite here. Nothing can stop the Volt Switch. It's going to come in, take its free kill. He goes to Ghastly, and Ghastly has Thunderbolt, so he's going to be able to knock out the Tirtoga, and notices he uses Substitute first to get the defense drop, and he's going to win the game from here. Now, Europe takes a 4-2 lead versus India. We enter into Game 7, which is between PJ and Lily in Generation 6, and the main thing about Generation 6 is that Fletch has Gale Wings, so it can outspeed everything. It's not very powerful, but that speed is valuable. So we see the Fletchling into Chinchou lead, unfortunate lead matchup. He goes to Snivy on the Volt Switch, and now it's very problematic. How do you deal with Ghastly? Ghastly is very annoying in Little Cup. It runs Hidden Power Fighting, Psychic, Sludge Bomb, and then Substitute. So what do? Do you predict Substitute? Do you predict Sludge Bomb and then go to Poniard? Do you predict Hidden Power Fighting? What do you do? It's very tough to deal with. Substitute, he predicts Substitute and uses Knockoff. And these are very risky plays right now, because he's risking Ghastly using Sludge Bomb and knocking him out. He goes to Poniard now, on the Sludge Bomb, and he gets literally every predict perfect. Now he goes to Mianfu, on the Hidden Power Fighting, and it's a Scarf Mianfu. So at this point, you basically have a free knockoff. Snubble is a 100% counter to Mianfu, with Intimidate and the Fairy typing, but even it doesn't like getting knocked off, so I think I would have just knocked off here. But he U-turns on the Ghastly, and then goes to Fletchling, which can outspeed everything. Substitute here, Fletchling, Hidden Power Fighting, not going to do a lot. Ghastly takes more damage, goes to Poniard now, goes to Poniard here too as a kind of a standoff, goes to Mianfu, gets a Stealth Rock, and this Stealth Rock is valuable for the Ghastly. Now it cannot come back in, and there's no Defogger on the team. And now it's kind of a predict. Do you predict Mianfu is going to high jump kick? If so, you go to Ghastly. Do you predict it's going to knock off? If so, you stay in. But it's a very tough predict to make. Which one do you go to? And unfortunately, he makes the wrong predict. And now he goes to Fletchling, but the problem is that Fletchling does not one-hit KO Mianfu. It does around 90, 95, but it doesn't one-hit KO. However, Ghastly with Psychic does one-hit KO Mianfu. He goes to Fletchling here, he doesn't get the one-hit KO. It does 95. Fletchling gets knocked out. He goes to Ghastly now to get the kill on Mianfu. But it's really tough now. You're down 4-5, well 4-4 if you count Ghastly. But now Chinchou comes in, and Lily makes the right predict, Ice Beaming into the Snivy. Now Snivy is going to get knocked out. He goes to Mianfu to preserve Snivy, and he predicts the Poniard as well. But it's very tough to deal with because Snubble is a 100% counter. Choice Scarf U-turn. Now she goes to Poniard. Poniard can get a free knockoff, and it's going to be very tough to deal with Poniard right now, because your only counter to Poniard is your Mianfu, but that's walled by Snubble. And at this point, Diglett and Mianfu completely lose to Snubble, so the game is basically over. Europe is going to win 5-2 versus India. You can't beat Snubble at this point. So, yeah. Europe takes a 5-2 lead. There's still a Game 8. Game 8 does not matter as such because the week is already over. We already lost 5-2. So this game, most players aren't playing that seriously when the game doesn't matter, but I'll go over it briefly. The main thing is that Europe is using the core of Natu and Porygon, and that is a very devastating core because it can really put a lot of pressure on Poniard. Say you use Poniard to check Natu and you take damage from Heat Wave. All of a sudden, you cannot check the Porygon anymore. Similarly, say Porygon gets a Thunderbolt or a Tri-Attack on your Poniard. Now Poniard is really going to struggle versus Natu. So we see an unfortunate high jump kick miss here, and Sanjay takes an early lead. But the problem is that he's really going to struggle with dealing with Natu and Porygon both. For example, he knocks off into the Pharaoh Seed, and Poniard does beat Pharaoh Seed 1v1. but you're going to be taking so much damage from, Rough Skin and Giga Drain and Knockoff that eventually Nat2 or Porygon will beat down the Ponyard. So it becomes very tricky, and at any point, Arsenine can sacrifice a Pokemon and then trap the Ponyard with Trapinch. So it's very difficult to deal with, and this Nat2 Porygon core is very good for that reason. So we move around a few turns. Eventually, we do enter a PP stall situation where Fungus and Ferroseed try and get PP stalled, but the ultimate point is that you cannot deal with Porygon when your Ponyard takes too much damage. It can be trapped by Trapinch at any time. Ferroseed is a big threat as well. And eventually, after the PP stall, then after the PP stall, Porygon is just going to win the game, and too much damage on Ponyard. Ponyard was overloaded, it couldn't possibly handle everything on the team. So Europe wins 6-2 versus India, and that's going to be our wrap for Week 2 coverage of the Little Cup World Cup. If you like this type of content, let me know down in the comments below.